Hi there. I hope you're doing well. Let's dive into today's drawing. As you can see, this is a scene from downtown Rome. There are a few buildings next to each other and a bus stop nearby. There are also quite a few people standing by the bus stop. I'm focusing on the buildings today, so I'm going to sketch them. First, I analyzed my reference photo to get a sense of the details, but I'll just draw what I can clearly see from a distance, not all the tiny, unclear details. I've also set up my perspective and already did the initial sketch in pencil. Now, I'm going to ink the drawing using a dip pen and waterproof ink.
Sitting in the basement apartment I rented with you.
Whenever I use a dip pen, I always keep a cloth nearby. Each time the ink runs out and I dip the pen back into the ink, I wipe the nib with the cloth to make sure the old ink doesn't dry and stick. This helps keep the ink flowing smoothly and makes my lines cleaner and more fluid, just like using a regular pen.
The holiday party we had with the crew. Romeo was roaming the garden. Saturday was spent in a parking lot. Gave it all we got. It was so
Another thing I always do when using a dip pen is hold the pen vertically for a moment after dipping it in the ink, so any excess can drip off. This way, you won't suddenly get a big blob of ink on your paper while drawing, and everything stays cleaner. Though honestly, I love dip pens so much that I even enjoy the little drips and splatters they can make.
following the leader down 8th Street to get what we can. Crawl up the walls, make a few calls to the man. Promising the prominent angle. Find the square feet of the triangular man who always had the plan. What's new?
The buildings in the background have lots of details when seen up close. I'm just sketching what I can see from this distance and keeping it simple. The front buildings, too, are being drawn in a loose, quick sketch style. Alright, now I'll wait for the ink to fully dry before moving on to watercolor painting. Before starting the watercolor, I erase the initial pencil sketch. I had to use my kneaded eraser here because I accidentally dropped my regular eraser, and no matter how much I searched, I couldn't find it. As for my watercolors, I bought individual pans. I picked colors I thought I'd use a lot in my paintings. I bought them online and arranged them in this wooden box. I really use madder brown often in my paintings, but I couldn't find it in these individual pans, so I have to mix different colors each time to get that shade. I have 2 watercolor brands, and the one I'm using in this video has vibrant, high-quality colors. But honestly, I don't think the brand of watercolor is super important. What really makes a big difference in your painting is the right paper, something that's 300 gray or heavier. Of course, I've used lighter papers too, like the one in this video, which is 220 gray Fabriano. It warps a bit, but it works for me since I don't use a lot of wet-on-wet techniques. Alright, let's get to painting. I start with the largest area, which is the middle building, and for the first layer I'm using yellow ochre. As you can see, my palette has some leftover paint from previous paintings. After I put down the first layer, I clean my palette to avoid mixing old colors with the new ones. I don't paint evenly. I leave some areas white and focus more on creating spots of color. My paints aren't too diluted or thick, and I don't press the brush hard on the paper. I'm holding the brush loosely. I bought my brushes a few months ago. These brushes are great for floral and botanical paintings. You can easily create petals in one stroke, and they're super soft. They're from a local brand, so you might not be familiar with them, but you can always find similar ones. I used to use a water brush in my previous videos, and I loved it. I got so used to it that I didn't want to use my regular brushes anymore. But the water brush was too small for my work, so I decided to try something new and bought 3 new brushes. 2 of them were bigger than I expected, so I don't use them much. I mostly use this one, and I'm really happy with it. Next, I'm painting the buildings further away with Mars Brown, applying it lightly and not evenly. I don't want to add too many layers, so I use Mars Brown in a thicker consistency for some spots. For the second layer, I'm using burnt sienna, which is similar to yellow ochre, but a bit darker. Now we've reached the darker section of the middle building, up to about the 3rd window. It looks like the building is only partially painted. I also add some of that darker color to the front part of the middle building, and areas that need to be a bit darker, like the ground floor and first floor. For these areas, I mixed sepia and cobalt blue, but it turned out too green, so I added ultramarine to give it a more blue tone and make it darker. I played around with the colors here to see what I could come up with and ended up with something similar to English red. So I mixed a bit of that with ultramarine and used it for the doors and windows. I let everything dry before moving on to the windows. The windows are light, but I'm going to paint them using cobalt blue mixed with turquoise. I don't paint them solid. I'd love to know what color you would use for the windows. You can also use white pens at the end of your painting after your watercolor is fully dry. They give a nice touch to your work and can add details like the balcony or windows. Finally, we're at my favorite part. I always feel like my painting isn't complete without doing this. I take a fine brush, dip it in black, and this time white too, and lightly splatter the paint over the empty areas. Just be careful not to overdo it. Today's the first time I tried splattering with white, and I really liked how it turned out. I think white works well for this too. And that's it. Thanks so much for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, you'll probably like this one too. I'd love it if you could subscribe to my channel, like the video, and share your thoughts with me. Wishing you all the best. Stay creative and keep up the good work.